Welcome, folks. We are super excited to have you. We have a bunch of folks that are going to be joining in right now. As you're coming into our webinar, we'd love to have you place into the chat, where you're from, your name, what you do, that kind of a thing. So just super brief, just so we can get a bit of a sense for all the folks that are jumping here onto the call. So take a minute or two, jump in there, location, who you are, and what your role is. We're going to be, as you all are throwing some stuff into there, we're going to be getting started here really quickly because we have a lot of really key things to jump into today. We're super excited to talk about this topic here about how we increase the engagement and productivity and collaboration of meetings when we're working together with other people. Have some really key learnings to be able to share. We're going to focus in on best practices. Yes, there'll be some tinges here of the way that we can leverage some of the Lucid products within that. We want to keep that pretty broad with the things that we're going to be engaging in here today. A couple of housekeeping items before we jump in. First off, this session is being recorded, and we will be providing you the link to the on-demand version after the webinar so that you can rewatch it, share it with your team, whatever you'd like. If this is now going to become, Saturday morning cartoons for you and you want to watch through this, then great, you'll have access to that. The link to the on-demand version is going to be sent to the same email that you used in order to register. So just look for that in your inbox tomorrow. That's number one. Number two, we do want this to be interactive, so please ask questions. You feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat. We're going to be keeping an eye on that throughout, and also have some time allotted at the end for any questions. If you are worried about a question getting missed because there's a lot of people talking through stuff, we have a big group here today, feel free to use the Q&A section in Zoom in order to log those questions. So if you want to make sure that we get to a question, then log your question in there. With that, let's introduce your speakers here today. Let's actually kick it over to Tori first, and then Morgan, and we'll kick it over to me. So Tori, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm happy to be here today. My name is Tori Fouts, and I am the Learning Experience Design Manager for our Learning Services team. So a lot of what I do is I manage a team of designers that works on a lot of on-demand content that helps enable our users use our product, as well as teaching best practices, such as what we're here to do today. So I'll kick it off to Morgan.
Hi, everybody. I am a learning experience designer here at Lucid. So excited to talk to you all. I'm inspired that so many people are here to pursue this opportunity for additional learning. I'm a big fan of lifelong learning. I love seeing how adults find ways to apply new skills in the workplace, in your life in general. So really excited to learn with you all today. All right, over to you, Christopher.
Cool, thank you. I'm Christopher. I am the Principal Professional Services Consultant for Lucid. Previous to my time here, I spent about 15 years in a big Fortune 5 company, doing many of the kinds of meetings that we're going to be talking about here today, as well as driving new product development, jumping into agile transformations, doing creative facilitation and helping teams to think differently. So I apply a lot of that learning to our customers in helping them to leverage Lucid towards those kinds of ends. So for today, we wanted to take a lot of that knowledge shared between Morgan, Tori, and I, and hand it over to you all to be thinking about how you can actually create better engagement, productivity, and collaboration in the meetings that you're having. To kick this off, I want to start thinking real quickly about some frustrations that you likely have with your existing meetings. Go ahead and start throwing in, a quick one-liner. What's your most frustrating thing about meetings today? Go ahead and throw that into the chat. We'll be taking a look at that. As you all are jumping into that, let me tell you a little bit of an experience from my own side. You'll probably relate to some of this. We actually had a meeting that was set as a part of a bigger strategic engagement. In this case, it was about a half-day session. We were coming together to get towards some outcomes and make some decisions. And we had a relatively small group. It was about 15 people or so coming together. And we had our objectives there at the beginning, but then eventually that dragged into conversations about things that were not on the topic, lots of discussion and debate about those kinds of things versus what we were actually talking about. And to the point that when we ended the meeting, we really didn't hit the actual objective itself. We talked about a lot of things, we got some frustrations out, but we didn't actually get to the direction that we needed. The biggest problem that I found from this was that we then started gaslighting each other afterwards and talking about, how we felt about being able to discuss and debate things. And that was a really good part of it. And we were essentially trying to justify to each other about how good the meeting was, even though we didn't actually get towards the outcomes and the results that we were actually looking for as a part of that. One of the key things that we see very similar things here from what you all have been mentioning. For me, it always comes down to, are we getting better outcomes from this? Are we getting to the right objectives? And this could be a real short meeting. It could be a 30-minute session. And did we hit the objectives then? Or it could be a multi-day workshop over the course of this. As we talk today, think about that entire range of that. And whether it's short or whether it's big, are we getting to the right outcomes? And what's blocking us from a lot? A lot of that is these kinds of problems. So, Tori, how do we solve this? How do we fix it? Help me fix it.
I have a couple of answers, but one major one is all these problems can be resolved with strong facilitation. And it's really funny because I think facilitation is kind of a misunderstood skill. And I say a skill because it's something that can be learned and not everyone is actually born with. But I think a lot of people assume that it's easy and that they might be doing it and excelling really well. But strong facilitation gets deeper than just going through an agenda, a list of agenda items. And we're hoping to just scratch the surface a little bit and share some best practices of how to get deeper into that and be able to become a stronger facilitator. So our objectives today, or our outcomes for this session, is we want you to leave here learning a couple of the skills that will help empower you to become a better facilitator, being first. The second thing, we want to be able to help you conduct more productive, time-efficient meetings, minimizing the amount of meetings that you're in by really making use of the ones that you're actually in and ways you can do that. And then finally, I feel like this group is going to love this, but getting better engagement and collaboration from your team. So we're going to touch on all these. And again, keep in mind, like, we're just scratching the surface on this, and there's a lot to learn from it. So I'll stop blabbing and kick it off. Let's start with what makes a strong facilitator. So I'm going to kick it back to you, Christopher.
Yeah, let's talk through that. Let me tell you a little bit of a story from my experience. This is a number of years ago, kind of building off of what Susan was talking about there. A good moderator is hard to find. I was jumping into meetings. I was being asked to lead and facilitate things, and I thought that I was pretty good. But I was making some really bad assumptions about what my role was and what I was actually supposed to be doing. And then I actually received some facilitation coaching from the great Elisa O'Donnell. So if you know her, love her. Elisa's great. That helped to change my mind about what my role was. The key thing here, Morgan, we can move forward. That it has to do with your identity, what you think that you're in charge of. Are you in charge of everything? Are you there to rule the world and to help them drive towards things? This came to a head for me at the very beginning because I was then asked to go in and facilitate this conversation, a brainstorming session, new idea development, blue sky thinking kind of thing, with a chemicals team, and we were trying to come up with new polymers. New catalyst that we could leverage. I barely knew what those words meant, and I thought that I was in real deep trouble. But that was because I misunderstood what my role was, what my intention actually was in that case. My role is actually distinct from other people that are there in the room. And if I don't understand that from the very beginning, then myself as a facilitator or another person as a facilitator that you might be able to give some feedback to, you're going to start getting off on the wrong point there. The truth here is that your identity has a lot to do with focusing in on the process. there's sort of a couple of key roles that are there typically within any meeting, whether this is, again, a super small one or really big workshop. You've got the participants that are there. They're the people bringing the content. So think about my meeting there with the chemists. Those are our participants. They know the content. They know the kinds of ideas. Maybe I'm bringing in also a really diverse group in there too, that may be people that aren't chemists, but we're looking for that naivete or diversity of opinion in the room. Okay, those are the people that are participating in the content. They're coming up with stuff. They're debating things. They're mashing things together in different ways and making decisions. All of that. Okay, a separate role is the sponsor. This is the person that their job is to focus in on the results, what we're trying to go after here. This may be somebody that owns the purse strings for something. If it's you're going after, we're looking for a new product to develop here, and they've got some money to be able to go after that. Okay, that might be that individual, or it might just be a manager of a team, and they're looking to make some decisions with the team about the strategic direction that we should go. That sponsor plays a really key role. And then separate from those two is the facilitator themselves. And what I misunderstood was that I thought that I also had to care about and own the results of the group. Okay, I also thought that I had to own the content, that I needed to know enough about chemistry to be able to help that team. Being able to separate that out and say, my role is very specific here. My role is focusing in on the process, the way in which the team is going to get towards better results. That had a two-pronged effect for me, okay? It changed the way that I facilitated first off, but it also helped me to have more confidence jumping into facilitating any kind of conversation here, whether that's a really small thing or a big blue sky opportunity there, okay? So with that in mind, there are some better practices and bad practices for facilitation. If you have that identity, if you're missing the true identity here around what your role as a facilitator is, then you're likely going to be doing things like pushing specific ideas or advocating for specific ideas. You may be trying to own content, interjecting in and saying like, well, I think that this might be an opportunity here. Or you might be trying to be a hero and own the entirety of things and help the team make the decisions and all of that, okay? If you see other people doing that, then that might be a chance to give some feedback to that facilitator and say like, hey, actually, what we could use some help with is these other things, these other pieces here on the right-hand side. We really need your help with leading the group towards the results, okay? Own that process, understand the process that we're going to make, and help us with moving along that path. And then encourage the discussion and debate amongst the people that are there that are participating and collaborating together, okay? If you see other people that may not be participating as well, pull them in and help them to be able to bring their best selves to bear, okay? That's your role. That's your identity if you're doing some really strong facilitation. Some best practices that you can do in order to actually really solidify this identity, okay? First off, happens to do with when you're planning, okay? When you're planning something out, a small meeting or a big one or whatever, lean on that sponsor for the clarity throughout. I should also interject here. Sometimes for really small meetings, the sponsor and the facilitator may actually be the same role. That's entirely okay, okay? Particularly if it's smaller things. You just need to make sure that you're helping the group with switching between, okay, so now I'm going to be playing the role of like helping us decide a result versus I'm focusing in on the process, okay? So note that. Sometimes that role is similar and that's entirely okay. Other times it may be something that is a bit more broad. And so if it is broader, then lean on that sponsor for the clarity. They should be the ones that are setting the direction. What are the outcomes that we're trying to get to from this? What are the outputs? Great questions that you can ask here of that sponsor is, or even yourself, if you are the sponsor, what does success look like? What does a good idea look like? What does a good result look like? What should we be able to do now that we have made these decisions? Okay, if we had a wildly successful meeting, what should now happen because of that? Okay. Also, a great role for you as a facilitator is to create a diverse set of participants to jump in, helping them with seeing, like, do you have people that have a very similar mindset here? Or maybe you can interject with some people that might have some other diverse opinions in there. And then build agendas and activities that focus in on those outcomes and output. A really helpful tool to try here would be the session planning. This is an example template. We'll give you guys access to this board so you have access to these different templates here, but that template has in there boxes for each of the different kinds of questions that you should be asking. This is going to help you have a much more well-rounded version at the end. Next best practice here real quick. enabling the group with the right kinds of tools. A lot of this thinking about things even before the meeting, okay? You've put together a really strong agenda, let's assume. You've got, good purpose in there. That should get out to that team beforehand. I was actually just talking with a leader earlier this morning that was just commiserating on, like, I just got invited to this meeting and there is no description in there. Okay, don't do that. Okay, be the person that is putting in there. You put in the effort. So have that agenda clear. Have any materials also clear in there. If you're leveraging Lucid, then you can use the share functionality. You could also use the Loom video. So if you wanted to walk somebody through the process of what we're about to go through for the day, record a quick video. That way they can watch that beforehand and then be ready to jump in. This is especially important if you are doing something for like a 30-minute meeting. If you've only got 30 minutes to be able to come to a decision about something, you need to leverage some of that asynchronous time prior to the meeting to be able to help people to understand and jump into that meeting ready to go and ready to make some decisions. So those are some great best practices for this one. Last best practice for this area here is going to be focusing in on creating safety. Your primary identity is to be able to be that advocate for people, whether somebody's stepping in a bit too much and they're jumping in too much to the conversation, getting into some of that and saying like, hey, let's create a little bit of space for this person. You may need to be doing some coaching during a break or something like that with somebody and saying like, hey, you're kind of creating a little bit too little space for Mary to jump in and share some of her thoughts. Can you create some space for that? Or even just being that advocate in the room itself. This is going to happen really well if you're assuming good intent, assuming that other people are coming with their best selves to the conversation. That's going to be really helpful. Establishing those rules of engagement as well. Like you're going to want to be able to relate back to something later on in the day about, well, we agreed that we were going to make sure that we kept our thoughts brief. Okay. Have that as a working agreement here for the entire team so that you have something to refer back to. Maintain that neutrality. You're not there to advocate for this idea or this idea. You want to make sure that all ideas or all thoughts, all decisions, all discussions and debates, that conflict has enough space to breathe. Okay, and you want to do that there. Climate setters are actually really great tools for doing some of that. We have a link over there on the right-hand side to do some of that. Things that you can do at the very beginning of the conversation. Even templates are other tools that you can leverage within this space. Okay, so that's solving a bit of the first of the challenges here. Let's jump to our next challenge, which is focusing in on how do I own that process? What does that really mean? Tori, you want to think about that?
Yeah. And what is that process? So one of the biggest myths that I learned in getting stronger with facilitation is that I'm not responsible for the ideas, or I guess better, like busting this myth is it's often like felt that you as a facilitator have to be responsible for all those ideas, and you don't have to be. I'm letting you off the hook. You're responsible for actually owning the process to ensure the group gets to their outcomes. So what does this process actually look like? This process that you're owning? It's broken down into 5 phases. And at a high level, we're going into just a few things with planning. So Christopher actually did a really great job with planning and kind of expressing some that you go into the template. But ultimately what you're doing in this phase is you want to make sure that you're defining what success looks like. And then from that point, you are using what you learn in the planning session to inform what you design and develop in the design phase. And those activities that you put in there, you need to make sure that they are driving towards the end in mind. Conducting this part of the phase is the actual game time. This is like when you're on stage and you're actually navigating through and leading the group through the session itself. And one of the biggest keys here is that you want to ensure that you are maintaining focus and movement throughout the entire outcome, or pushing the group in particular towards that outcome. And then finally, documentation and adjusting. These are usually going to come on the tail end, although you are documenting as you go through the experience, or at least you should be. But really at these stages, you want to make sure that you're documenting decisions so that you are able to stay aligned as projects progress. And then also you always want to know am I getting what I need from these sessions? Is this aligning? Do we need to have more of these meetings? What does this look like moving forward? And being able to review and improve those is going to be crucial for your effectiveness as a facilitator. The analogy that I make, and excuse me if I make too many car analogies in this space, but I feel like you are driving the car and you know where the starting destination or where the starting point is and where you need to lead everyone at then get them to their destination. So what does it look like at a little bit of a deeper level? So when you're thinking about designing with the end in mind, things that I consider is, am I creating a visual flow and structure with the activities and the outcomes that really feels organic and that is easy for people to follow? I personally like to use pads and frames, and that's what we're using right now. So it's a little bit meta that we're in Lucid Spark right now, or kind of showcasing this, but this is a game changer for me because it allows me to remove some of the friction that people feel in the actual workshop itself. And they're not having to wonder, where do they go next? What am I supposed to do? And that's another piece of what's really crucial is when you're designing and developing what these activities look like, you want to explanation proof the content itself. And so some of the best explanation proof content that I engage with is do the activities express what it is, why I'm doing it, and how to do it. Really simple. You don't want to over convolute it with all of the text. You want to keep it as simple as possible. And you can kind of see here from this template how when you structure it, you're wanting to start off with these, climate setters, moving on to outcomes, agenda, and then Morgan, if you can exit out of this, I can go to the next point too. That's really crucial. The activities that you choose, you want to start with going wide before narrowing. And what this is really connecting to is divergent and convergent thinking. What's really fascinating is with sessions that have convergent thinking, but not divergent, you find yourself limited on possibilities that you can move forward. But if you are in a session without divergent thinking, I knew I was going to screw that up. When you're in a session where you have divergent thinking, but lack convergent thinking, you may run the risk of actually not having actionable items. If you have convergent thinking, but not divergent thinking, you're limited in what you can actually move forward. So what we like to do here, though, is really expand, go into those divergent activities. And really at this stage, we're looking for more quantity rather than quality. We're not making judgments at that point. We want as many ideas as possible, really expand. And then we'll start to filter and move down into more convergent thinking, where we'll start to get a little bit more analytical and we'll start to move towards action items. So both of these are crucial in these sessions. And you want to think about the activities you engage with so that they're supporting those, because it creates balance and focus on the content itself and where it's leading towards for the outcomes. And then you want to add a buffer time to your time estimates. Things always take longer than we expect. So I think it's just safe to just plan on, we like to use 50% of the estimation that you originally established. So for example, if I think an activity is going to take 4 minutes, I'd cut that in half. So 2 and plus that, and we'd make the activity 6 minutes. So I like that 50% rule, just as kind of like a guide to give you buffer. And in doing this, you have space to ask questions, have a little bit more discussion around things if you feel like the group is really jiving with something and you're not too stressed about, okay, we need to move on. Because 9 times out of 10, there's going to be things that are going to pop up unexpectedly, which brings us to the last point. Be prepared to adapt your plan, because even the best prepared experiences are going to have some glitches, and that's okay. But I can reassure you that if you're doing due diligence in the planning and the design phase, you're already having like a really good foundation here to be able to adjust if you need to.
Yeah, one thought along those lines.
Yeah.
My favorite quote from well, it's attributed to the boxer Mike Tyson. I don't know for sure if this really was him, but attributed to him is, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen with many of these
Right.
meetings. Got a big plan and all these different things. If you have a solid understanding of the outcomes and the output, then it's when they start to change, you can easily adapt and make sure that the group is getting towards the end results.
Right.
So that foundation becomes really key, and just be ready. Like every single one of particularly the bigger sessions have always made modifications. So love that.
Yeah, perfect. Love that. Thanks for sharing that, Christopher. So in this third phase, which is conducting, if nothing else, you are wanting to focus the group on the outcomes. And in particular, it drives me absolutely crazy when I am in a session and I have no idea what we're trying to drive towards myself. I don't know how to contribute. I don't know where my head is supposed to be at. So I get extremely frustrated if the facilitator isn't communicating that. So communicate the outcomes and the outputs early, but also refer to it often too, because as one is able to do when you're in a group and you're driving and having all these ideas, it's really easy to go off-roading, and you need to be able to redirect this car, right? We don't want to take unexpected exits, right? Okay, so we want to be able to keep the road, be able to like get to that destination, which is really important. And being able to communicate those outcomes early and frequently is going to be really important to that. Another thing that I really like to use in terms of focusing the group, Morgan, if you can unhide this container here, in Lucid Spark, when I create these activities, I'll use this container right here. I'll hide it so that the team knows we're not moving on to the next session until like we've covered this. And it helps me kind of control the pacing a little bit more. So I like to use that little hack when I'm in the boards and I'm trying to guide them through it. Another thing that we like to do is making sure that the timer is visible. And why we really like doing this is because time offers a really great creative constraint. So it really pushes people, or it creates more of a constraint that people will have to combat and generate more ideas through more quickly. So, but on top of that, you're able to manage the workflow, making sure that you're hitting all the points that you need to and all of the sections that you need to, but also everyone in your session is accountable to it and can also see it. So if someone is detracting from what you need to talk about, you can easily maneuver the conversation and say, hey, we got to move on, we're done with this session, whatever. And you can do it in a gentle way because the timer is kind of there being a type of overture on that. The parking lot for off-topic thoughts. So we use this often because naturally in sessions, I think it's really easy to generate other ideas that might not be relevant to the discussion there. And that's okay, right? We don't want to diminish those things, but we still are focused on getting to the outcomes, right? We still have that destination to get to, no unexpected exits. So let's put that thought in a parking lot area. And we'll typically do that with like a container, and off the grid space where people can just drop their thoughts in there. And then if we have time at the end, we can revisit it. And we use that often. We really like that space. And we've actually been able to generate other ideas that could lead into the outcomes when revisiting that section. But it allows us to maintain the focus and move forward towards the outcomes itself. And then validate outcomes as the session progresses with the sponsor. So sometimes like you might be dually the sponsor and the facilitator, so you can check in with yourself. But in those scenarios where a sponsor is actively there, you might want to be connecting with them at the break or at the end of the session. If it's a short session, then you might be sending them a review later asynchronously via Slack or some other communication that works really well for you, just kind of giving an update in that space. But ultimately, you want to get a read from the sponsor if you're going in the right direction and if it's getting to where you need to go. And then finally, this is so important. End with next steps and who owns what, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in such incredible creative sessions and we do not end up doing anything with that information. That board sits there like untouched and really nothing moves forward. And so timelines and Lucid cards in particular and Lucid Spark are something that I will actively bring into the session with my team. And I'll say, we have this much amount of time, like let's start planning it right now. And I allow the team to be able to pick what they want to be responsible for. And they're able to actually look at their own calendars and be able to create a plan that we all agree to. And that creates more accountability. This is huge though. Do not end a session without those next steps. All right. Now the last two phases, documentation and adjusting. So we want to continuously improve improve, and stay aligned. Retroing the meeting is a super powerful tool. We have a few templates that are really effective in this and are actually really quick, but ultimately you want to see what's working and what's not, because if you're just moving forward and you don't really know what's, if you're able to like achieve the things that you want, or like the team isn't aligned, then you've already failed in being able to run this meeting. Christopher, I know that you've had some thoughts on retros in the past, and you do this really well in our sessions. Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, just that, even if it's a small one, you can do that with, just an afterwards, hey, go out to this space, particularly if you have asynchronous tools like Lucid, then you can have a space open, encourage people to go in and do that. But particularly if you have like a multi-day session, then at the end of each day, let's retro. That way you're ready to actually modify things on day 2 or day 3, if it's a bigger workshop or something like that. Or if it's just learning for something in the future. It's a great one.
Love that. Yeah. And then identifying what processes did work. So if you come out of a retro and things worked really well, there were certain templates that you liked or certain activities that you liked, documentation that works really well for the team, templatize that. Templatize it and make it a standard for your team to use frequently, revisit it. People look for patterns and consistencies and want to develop these habits. So enable your team to do that by having them, really contribute and say what's working and not. So you can pull from those retros. Okay, let's standardize this. Let's make this a consistent thing or a norm moving forward in how we work. And templatizing those things make it super easy for you to retouch and save so much time. Super efficient. Communicate status frequently post-meeting. This is huge. Oftentimes with meetings, it's not just a one and done thing, especially with big projects. You're going to have to continually sync, do some work, come back. And within that, not all of these have to be meetings, right? Some of them do. But a part of this communication is being able to establish with your team what makes the most sense and what the norms are for you there. So there are a couple of things where you can utilize integrations with Asana or Confluence, Slack, being able to communicate those things. Sometimes if we're actively in a board, I like to leave comments and tasks for the team to actually engage with straight from the board. So it's like, hey, we really liked this. Let's add this to the team folders, which is also another great practice that Lucid has available. And we engage with that often so that everyone just has everything to access in one spot. And then finally, share documentation in places where teams frequent. Again, this is kind of just another pin on what I just articulated, but making sure that people know where to find it and that they can actually understand it. So it goes to that piece of like, remove the friction of them trying to figure out and decode it, right? Make sure that it makes sense to them and whatever context you need to give. And we've said this before, we love using Loom with Lucid Spark or with our Lucid Suite. You can leave videos in there too, to be able to give a little bit more context if necessary. Y'all, we could spend hours on the process alone. We go much more into depth with this in our Creative Facilitation Badge, which we'll share at the end of this. But these are some really key things that are going to help you own that process and get your crew to the destination. Drive that car without those exits and those off-roading situations. So,
absolutely.
Sorry.
Let me chime in here too. Like one of the worst things that happens, the biggest failure that I've seen, and it's weird. Like you can time travel with this. I don't know if you knew this, but time travel is real. How many times we've been in a meeting, we think that was great, okay, and everybody's excited and they come away from it, and then fast forward a month or two, and people are throwing up their hands and they're saying, "Well, nothing came from that meeting. That was a waste of our time."
Right.
The key differentiator, okay, you just retconned that meeting in the future. Okay, that's time travel. The way to solve a bit of that is by making sure that those updates are there and that people have visibility to the results associated with a lot of that.
Awesome. Cool. Let's keep tracking along. All right, Morgan.
Okay.
Tell us about engagement and collaboration, please. Give the people what they want.
Christopher and Tori, can I just get a thumbs up that you can hear me? I've been running the board, so I just want to make sure you can hear me okay. All right. Love that nonverbal engagement. Great example. Hi, everybody. Like I said, I've been running the board, so I've been a little bit quiet, but I am so excited to talk to you about collaboration because right as we started the webinar, we could see when we were talking about those frustrations in facilitating a meeting, it's how do you get engagement? How do you get your people to participate? And often we kind of think that collaboration is a no-brainer. You just get the people in the room and they'll somehow collaborate. But we've talked about your identity as a facilitator and the process. Tori took us through the process that you own. But now we add the people into that process and we take those skills and we're going to apply them to bringing your team together. So I wish it was just as easy as getting everybody in the same room together, but what we're going to focus on as the facilitator is having intention about how to engage your people, which is something that you can plan for. And hopefully it will become your favorite part. It won't be something you dread trying to get people to engage in your meeting. So it just requires some intention. We're going to talk about how to create an experience where participants can bring their whole selves, their best selves. So we want to draw upon all their experiences and draw out all the ideas that they have to solve whatever that complex problem is, or to reach consensus about that topic, that outcome that you've established that we talked about. We definitely want to establish that outcome and drive toward it. So as a facilitator, because you're not as responsible for the content or the ideas, you're a bit more removed, like Christopher and Tori have said, you're able to focus on helping the group navigate conflict, right? Like you're observing everybody so you can see when there's maybe like a little bit of bad tension or good tension. You can maintain collaborative equity, which again, we'll talk about in just a second. You can, if you're sensing that people are confused about what they're doing for a certain activity, you can provide clear instructions and manage the energy of the group. Most of those things are pretty easy, like based on observation, you can just kind of see, oh, the group's getting tired or they're confused about instructions. But one of the more uncomfortable things, at least for me, is managing conflict because it can just be uncomfortable. But we're going to share some practices and skills that will help you feel more comfortable. Maybe some of these things can be used as prompts, as the phrases that I'll say. Feel free to take them and riff off of them, adapt them for your own use. The spoken strategies is where I like to start. So like managing conflict, a lot of what we've said is our spoken strategies, right? As a facilitator, you're managing with your voice. But I like to have a prompt to work with while I'm learning something new. So hopefully these are helpful for you. So if you want to think back, right here on the left, we have head nodding. So if you think back to a meeting where you're like, you know what, I'll agree with anybody just to get out of this meeting. I just want it to be over with. Maybe there are one or two people that are dominating and you're like, oh my gosh, just get me out of here. There are definitely some strategies for combating that. So simply, again, just verbally asking those dominating collaborators kindly, right, to take a break, to say, you know, we'd like to hear from, I think Christopher used the imaginary name of Mary. We'd like to hear from Mary. So if, you know, so-and-so, if you could take a break, let's hear from those we haven't heard from. So simple, easy, gentle way of drawing out those who maybe are just nodding their heads to get it over with. Also communicating openly that we're gonna provide an opportunity to play the devil's advocate. We want to push back on ideas and create a safe space to do that. So we're not doing it in a threatening way, but by communicating that this is the time for that exercise, it makes it a little bit more comfortable because your participants know what to expect and they feel comfortable doing that with each other. On the other side of this, we have apocalypse, which is where everyone is maybe overstimulated. There's lots of ideas. If you have a bigger group, there's a lot going on, a lot of inputs, right? And so that can result in frustration and, again, like unhealthy conflict. What can you do in these situations? Again, reading the group, you can tell when, okay, we need a breather. Everyone just needs a brain break for a second. So you can easily take a break. You could change the activity. Say, okay, this one is, we're disagreeing a lot. Let's maybe try a different activity to lead us in a different direction. Christopher, before I get to the sort of the healthy tension point, do you have anything to add about these head nodding or apocalypse?
I mean, just that this is where your ability to be sensitive to the tension and temperature in the room is going to be key as somebody. Whether you have the official role of a facilitator or you're just you're a participant. Even sometimes having somebody that's that advocate for other people. Think of yourself in that role. Like those are the kinds of tools that you're going to want to be pulling, particularly for this session or section to do this well. Yeah.
Great. Exactly. And those kind of along those lines is creating those norms like we talked about, or the rules of engagement, right? So again, just communicating to your participants what they can expect. So if anyone in the chat, drop in the chat if you're familiar with improv. One of the rules that we like to establish for our meetings is to use the improv strategy of yes and, right? So you respond to an idea with, yes, I like your idea. And I'm wondering, how we can do it within our budget, or I like your idea and I'm wondering how we can get buy-in from all these different departments. So you're not shutting anyone down. You're just expanding on their idea and asking a question. So that's one of the norms that we like to establish. Okay, so everybody's, having this healthy conflict. You got a good discussion going. But how do we make sure that everyone is participating in the way that's best for them? Because we know that when we're engaged and when we feel like we've contributed to something, we have more buy-in. We're more invested in the long-term success of the project or the idea when we've contributed to it in some way. I mean, so you want your participants to have that buy-in, to be engaged. What we like to call this is establishing collaborative equity. So you probably know what those words mean separately, but just to clarify, what we mean by that is to provide ample opportunities for each participant to contribute in the way that they're most comfortable. So again, as the facilitator, it's just about being intentional and creating lots of options for how to engage. Quick plug we have our amazing colleagues here at Lucid created a what's your collaboration style quiz. So you can take that and see, or your team members can also take it and see what's their collaboration type. So introspective, expressive, or relational. You can also, another quick plug for our Creative Facilitation Badge, in the first course of that badge pathway, you can also take the quiz and see your results. So let's say, for example, you have some introspective collaborators and you want to know how to engage them. In person, you could see, if they're taking notes, or if you're writing on a physical whiteboard, everyone has a different color pen. So if I have a red color pen and there's red all over the board, but I haven't said anything verbally, you definitely know I'm engaged. So just setting up lots of different means for participation.
I was just going to say, this one is huge for me. My collaboration style is very different from my manager's, but because he knows my collaboration style, he knows that I like to be prepared. He will give me a heads up of we're having a big brainstorm about this. Here are our outcomes, because I feel like I can't be as creative if I don't do a little bit of research, some exploration prior to coming to the meeting. Whereas he is let's get into a blackboard and party. Let's do this. Just put sticky notes in there. Right. And he's great with that, but that's how he likes to riff off of other people. I like to research. And that has been a game changer for how we work as a team and how I show up in those meetings and how he supports me. So just a plug there, this is huge for sure.
Building that for larger meetings. So applying that into a broader context. One of the things to do as a facilitator then is to interview people, interview the people that are going to be participants, get a sense for their style, get a sense for are they more introverted? Are they more extroverted? Are they novices? Are they experts? All of those different ranges of individuals. And that way you can make sure that you've got a really balanced group that's going into that. And you also have an understanding of their style. That's going to help you with designing things in a way that really engages them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to me, I don't know how everyone feels in the chat, but to me, that sounds so fun. I love understanding how different people learn and engage. So I love those suggestions. Thank you guys so much. Our next sort of practice for establishing collaborative equity would be to nominate an advocate. So again, just establishing those expectations ahead of time and say, often Christopher, I'll use you as an example. Christopher facilitates meetings for our team all the time, and he'll establish someone as the remote advocate, right? So if everyone in the room is offering suggestions and ideas, then Christopher will kick it over to whoever the advocate is. And the advocate will say, all right, kind of like a game show, like everybody at home, like we'd like to hear two comments from those of you at home. And then that's a really open opportunity for our remote colleagues to participate. So just another great thing that we've been able to implement and that I feel is really successful. And then I feel this is maybe a little bit more common, but again, you can do it virtually easily if you've done Zoom breakout rooms, is to do small group work, because it can be less intimidating to talk to one or two other people than to a big group. And you can do this in Lucid by using our breakout boards. So if you just create your breakout boards ahead of time, send everyone off, and then we've talked about how you can communicate with them in their different boards and time block things. So I get really quickly, because I want to leave time for Q&A, but just if you're noticing that the energy of your group is going down, or like we talked about the apocalypse when everyone's a little overstimulated and you just need a brain break, there are lots of energy starters that you can do to just kind of break the cadence of the meeting and kind of shake things up a little bit. I'll give a quick example. Christopher, we included this on the board, but one example that Christopher has in the list of energy starters is shake the can, where you grab a can of soda and you shake it, and then you invite someone to come up to the front and open it. And then whoever it is that comes up to the front, they open it, whatever happens, happens. And then you talk as a group about what it means to take risks and to have courage. And I love that energy starter. What a funny, Christopher, anything else you'd add to that? Any other energy starters you'd mention?
Just that highlighting what Morgan did with that was that, like, they can both be fun, but they can also teach a principle or help a team to be able to behave in a different way. So if you see that, you know, people are closing off or something like that, you can do an energy starter that both brings the energy back up, but then teaches a principle about, like, hey, you know what, we should take some risk here and listen to each other, things of that nature. So use that as a lens for deciding which kinds of energy starters you might want to do.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And then our last sort of, as you're bringing your group together, like Tori mentioned, you're filtering through your ideas, you're converging that part of the process. You want to be able to reach consensus quickly. And you can also do this in a visual way. So just quickly to mention, one thing that we use often is fist of five. So at the very beginning of my section, when I started talking, I asked Christopher and Tori to give me a thumbs up. So fist of five is sort of similar. It's just gauging, taking a temperature check of how everyone feels about the outcome that you've arrived to. Or even if you want to know their energy level, you could say, okay, a 5 is I'm feeling great. I'm totally invested in this idea. And a 1 is I need more discussion. I need more clarity. And then you just count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you do whatever number you're feeling. So super simple way to get engagement from everyone non-verbally. Anything else, Tori or Christopher, that you'd add before I kick it back over to Christopher for our Q&A and our finish up?
Yeah, I mean, just highlighting, like, the one thing that I was trying to do, this is another thing that helped me to feel much more confidence as a facilitator, is if everybody is capturing and recording their own thoughts, then we're not getting any translation errors, like, you know, me interpreting things, not talking about languages specifically, but and also you get more out on the board at once versus now you got a bottleneck for somebody. So encourage everybody. That the key thing, like, you'll get lots of conversation and people talking back and forth. If you want to get that directed in the right direction, then remind them, hey, those are great thoughts. This is great suggestions here. It's all in the ether now. So unless you write it down, it's gone. And then, oh, geez, I need to write that down. And they'll get that right back there.
Tori, anything to add before we move on?
No, I think that's crucial. I think the other plug too is, and we've said this before, I really love using assigned like sticky note colors so that it does allow me to be able to either follow up with someone if we're not able to really make sense or develop an idea further, or if I want to dive down deeper to it and it's maybe not as relevant to the outcomes, I know how to sync back with that person, right? Or being able to give a little bit more of a voice or give people an opportunity who I have a lot of people on my team who feel more comfortable putting their thoughts on sticky notes rather than just like talking over someone else, or like they're less I'd say like assertive and like vocally, right? And so I think that practice in particular has been something that's been really valuable in me being able to make space for everyone and making sure that everyone feels included and that they have buy-in here and they have a say in what they're doing, you know? So those are like, and Fist of Five for me is also a game changer. These are all great.
Perfect. All right. Just to showcase in Lucid Spark what Tori was talking about. So if Christopher left a comment or a sticky note on the board, he would use a pink sticky note. And then I know without him having to write his name, oh, that's a Christopher comment. I'm going to respond to it in green. And then he knows, oh, Morgan just added on to my idea. So that's what we mean when we say collaborator colors. And when we talk about the sticky notes, we're just everybody's all these different colors on the board. I love to see it.
So many times you can see that's a Christopher comment without it being my color.
He doesn't need a color code. We know Christopher's notes.
That's great. Okay, back over to you, Christopher.
So you've learned skills to become a better facilitator, the process for conducting meetings effectively, and ways to engage people in that. You may think that this is the end, but wait, there's more. We have some parting gifts for you all. You can earn the Creative Facilitation Badge. We've mentioned that a couple of times here. We got a QR code for this one. And also, for those that are looking for some help, have a coach at your side. We also have, Maureen, if you want to skip to the next one, some hands-on help as well. So you can go to that QR code and request to get some time with some of our creative facilitation coaches to help you with your next upcoming meeting. So with that, we're going to close out the webinar. We are at our time here, but thank you for participating with us. Come back and review this. We will be sending out a recording of this as well as a link to this board. So you've got plenty of content to be able to go off of, and have an awesome time then making your meetings far more effective and engaging and super fun. So with that, have an awesome week and have fun.